All right, good morning, folks. Let's see, people are starting to filter in here. Wonderful. I'll go ahead and get things kicked off, and we will get started with our daily lunch and learn. So, good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are in the world, everyone. My name is Eric Walmerick, and I'll be hosting today's version of the Decisions Lunch and Learn meeting, I guess a webinar. I'm not sure what to call this, but anyway, let me do a couple of things. I'll talk about the lunch and learn. I'll introduce myself, and then we can dive right in. So lunch and learn, if you're not familiar, if this is your first time, all it is a daily Monday through Thursday hour call where you get to sit with a decisions expert and talk about decisions, anything decisions related you want to talk about. You have a question on how to do something in the product, an update on the ticket you may have, what we're doing in the future with the tool, who the coolest person in the office is, whatever. We're happy to answer any questions you may have related to decisions, the company, or the product throughout this hour. So you'll get a number of different folks or experts on the call here, kind of switching in and out, joining, so that you get different angles and aspects and kind of perspectives of folks who work here at Decisions. So that's what we do. It's every hour, Monday through Thursday, or every day, Monday through Thursday, from noon to 1 p.m. Eastern time. And so if you can't make it today, or if you want to share this with colleagues or other folks, just let us know. We're happy to share that out. So what we do is we have a chat panel and a Q&A panel, or you can raise your hand in the attendees panel and come off mute and ask any question you want. And so feel free to start queuing those up, thinking about them, find the chat button or the raise hand button and type those up, and we'll just take them as they come in and answer them to the best of our ability. If it's something I cannot answer, we will go ahead and follow up as soon as this call is over. So that's the purpose and plan, I guess. And without further ado, let me go ahead and introduce myself and dive in. My name is Eric Walmerick. If you haven't gotten to meet me before, or haven't seen my name, I actually work with the product team over here at Decisions. I help lead some of the product roadmap stuff. I help write requirements for new features. So I'm kind of a product manager, if you will, but I've been with Decisions for 8 years. And I've done a little bit of everything. I actually started originally as a junior developer writing some code, and as the company grew, I've done a number of roles, from big, professional services projects to tiny implementations to support. For a while, I ran our security and compliance. And most recently, I actually was in charge of the training team. So if you attended training in the past few years, most likely that was me or some of my direct reports going through and teaching you how to use the Decisions product. So that's just a little bit about my background and expertise. If you have questions related to that, currently I'm really focused on the roadmap and where we're taking decisions, really detailed view of how we're looking at the next 18 months, but a bigger view of how we kind of evaluate the next few years and where decisions is going to be headed. And so I have some things prepared to talk about that if there are no questions. But like I said, I do see some folks on here, so please feel free to raise your hand, type in the chat panel, and we can go from there. I don't see anything off the bat. So to start, what I have prepared. Oh, I do. Oh, never mind. There we go. Raised hand. Perfect. I don't have to stall any longer. I can talk about the roadmaps and cool things we're doing. But I'm gonna mispronounce your name. I'm guessing it's Mirel.
Murray.
Murray. Okay, I'm so sorry for butchering the name. But welcome. Yeah. What's your question?
So I wanted to know. This seems like an odd question, but I wanted to know if there are any utilities available to help completely remove decisions. And here's my reason for asking, because that's a strange question to ask at a lunch and learn. I have a local install. I had 7 installed, and I uninstalled it because one of our clients is on version 6.19, and we would like to go directly from 6.19 to version 8.
Okay.
Now, I know that in order to get, I know that to get our dev environment upgraded, since Decisions hosts it, all I have to do is send an email. If it all goes to heck on the background, I don't know. They just tell me when it's done.
Yep.
So I would like to have a set of instructions for how to do that. But I know that you can't go backwards from 6 to 7. So I have a feeling that even though I uninstalled 7, there's still some hooks in there that won't let me install 6 cleanly.
There potentially is. The really big consideration is what database you're pointing to. So if you are trying to point to the same database, like say you want to install 7 and then you try to run this version 6 installer and you point to a version 7 database, an existing database, you might run into some hiccups there. But as long as you've run the uninstall on version 7 and then you run the version 6 installer and point to a clean database or a brand new database, you should have no issues.
Okay.
The
That's
cleanup we
really
do.
what I want to make sure of.
Perfect. Yeah, the cleanup we do in install should remove all like local directory stuff and compiled code. All that stuff gets removed when you want to install through the uninstall.
Well, there's
so
still
yeah,
some directories out there. That's why I asked.
yeah, we leave some things for audit history and some
Okay.
things for like install history based stuff. But as far as the actual execution engine, that does get removed.
Okay. So I'm planning on installing 6.19, importing the working project rather from from dev into my local, making sure it works, and then upgrading to 8 so I can
Cool.
both see what does it tell me I need to provide and any potential, any hiccups I might run into, which I know won't be all of them. But
yeah, perfect. Yeah, no problem at all. Then I would just say make sure you point to a brand new database, and that should be all you need to do.
All right, thank you very much.
Cool. And of course, if you run into any issues, just let us know and we'll hop on a quick call.
Will do. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. All right, come on, that's too easy. That's an easy question. All right, cool. Well, sweet. I mean, since we're talking a little bit about version 8, that's kind of where I'm focused heavily as far as design and new features coming out. So if there's other questions, again, raise your hand. Please feel free to type it out. But what I could talk about is a little bit about our roadmap. And I actually have some cool screenshots here of some future cool things we're doing. So yeah, let me take a few minutes here and start walking through this. If you have questions on specific tasks or what I'm showing on my screen, I'm happy to dive in. What the slides I'm going to show you are actually taken from a bigger presentation. It's about an hour-long roadmap presentation I give every other Thursday. So if anyone's interested in joining that call, that's Thursdays. It's 11 a.m. Eastern, 11 to noon. And it will be next Thursday. So what is that? That'll be the 11th. So next Thursday, the 11th, will be the next product roadmap review that we do. This is a section of that where we actually look at the detailed plan for the next 18 months. And so what you're looking at here is a series of R&D tasks or research and development tasks. All of these are either major initiatives that we are adding new features to the tool, we're completely adding a new design experience, we're redesigning an existing experience that takes a lot of consideration. And so these are major development efforts that you're looking at here as R&D. That's why we only have a few each quarter. This does not encompass all of the fixes or changes or updates we make to the tool. Simple fixes like I need a new property on a step, or we're going to add a new step that does this CSV or Excel manipulation. Those are going to be just added in our normal release cycle. And you can check those out on the documentation site. We have all the release notes there. But to take a quick look at what we're doing this quarter, we're now in Q3. I should probably highlight that on the slide. But throughout the first half of the year, we really focused on getting version 8 out the door. Version 8 is our containerized version. It's our first version that does allow you to install on something other than a Windows server. We've added back multi-tenancy, and because there's a new hosting kind of mechanism, we've spent the first 2 quarters really stabilizing that build, making sure we understand clustered environments, making sure we understand the horizontal scaling of containers. So there's a lot of work's been done there to try to just kind of get version 8 out the door and stable. And so you see things throughout the first kind of 2 quarters that really focus on that. Starting here in quarter 3, what we're really focusing now in is we're honing in on a few of the designer experience, specifically targeting deployment of decisions. Both, the first half is kind of the hardware deployment of decisions. Now we're looking at how you can take projects that you build in decisions and deploy them across multiple environments. And then what that looks like and how they integrate and how they report on each other and those sorts of things. So that's kind of what the rest of the year is focused on. There's 2 key things we're building there. The project-based deployment or project-based build experience for our developers in the tool, as well as an update to the repository. It's actually a rewrite of the repository to be more of a deployment mindset. And I'll talk about both of those in a minute. I actually have some slides with some screenshots in them. But those are kind of the ideas of what we're focusing on. We're also continuing to integrate process mining If you're not quite familiar with that term, we acquired at the end of last year a process mining company that does visualizations of kind of state-based logging events. So if you have a process that's running, like a decisions process, a case entity, or a process folder, or even just a process where there's good logging, digital logging of events and time-based events, we now have a visual way to represent that and analyze those types of processes. So you can see the paths that they take, you can see the variance, you can see the slowdowns, the actors who come in and who takes the longest. And you can now start to, in a visual designer, kind of experience an execution of a flow and start to gain insight and understanding from it so that you can go optimize and make your process better. Anyway, that's going to continue to get integrated more closely to our product as we already allow you to do it with case entities and process folders. We're going to start to allow even more process insights to be sent over to process mining for, kind of visualization, as well as those visualizations to be put in your design experience. So you actually can experience them as you're developing as well. So some really cool stuff coming down the pipeline there. But what I'm looking at here in Q3 and Q4, there's a few small things, not small things, a few kind of side tasks that I just want to highlight. For example, client-side rules. This is more of an execution improvement, a performance improvement for your browser experience. We're trying to put a little bit more load on the browser or on the client, the computer that's accessing decisions, which allows for a little bit snappier response, some faster responsive UIs, and less load on the server, the application server that actually does most of your processing. So some of the UI we're starting to put more on the load of the client, which is really good. It's actually going to improve performance a lot. So rules are some of the things we're starting to put over there, like validation, visibility, those sorts of things. Something else we're continuing to work on is performance optimization. So we're actually going to be redesigning some tools for system administrators. So if you have to administrate a decisions install or you want to get insight, basically you want to know your server health, how is decisions running, we're going to be building a complete report and series of dashboards that give you greater insight and kind of give you a more packageable or exportable package of information that you can start analyzing and understanding. So that's in this quarter, but really by the end of the year, the two things are task 145 and 146, project view and deployment server. And like I said, project view is this idea that we want people who build in decisions to conceptualize their applications as a singular project, as a box, a containerized thing that they can use. So you can take a single project and all of the flows and rules and things that make up an application or make up a project are kind of constrained. They're in their own experience. And then those can get taken and exported and deployed across multiple servers. And so we're updating the UI and changing a little bit of how developers experience and build workflows and decisions with the intent that we want to put these boxes around projects. And it's going to give us a ton of cool things to do. Like we again can not have as many crazy dependencies in a folder tree. We can put some better default dashboarding and organization for you. Deployment becomes much more rock solid rather than trying to filter, thousands of dependencies across hundreds of folders. That goes away. So there's a lot of work there to just kind of constrain the build experience to kind of boxes of projects. That's going to then improve deployment server, which is the rename for the repository, which we want to change the mindset. We don't want developers to be the ones who move across servers and say, hey, I have to go to QA and pull and check out this project. What we really want is, think of the narrative that, I make a change and I just notify through an IT ticket and say, hey, you need to deploy version 6 of my workflow to QA. That user, that IT ops user, or that kind of person who manages that CI/CD pipeline, goes to the deployment server, sees the change, reviews the change, approves it, puts it into the build, runs the tests against the build, make sure it's good, clicks a button to deploy it to the QA server, gets a report back, make sure all the unit tests pass, and then signs off on it and says, closes the ticket and says your deployment is complete. We want it to be the people who are caring about deployment don't have to be the people who have the tribal knowledge of the project itself. They're just part of a traditional CI/CD pipeline user. All right, kind of rambling aside, I did see a question come in. If you want to come off mute, you can go ahead and ask it.
Okay, so can you go back real quick to the client side rules and
Yeah, absolutely.
pushing more computing power, if you will, I forget the phrase you used, to the client machine? Is that going to strictly be from the browser, or are you intending for there to actually be something installed on the user machine?
Oh yeah, strictly from the browser. Nothing,
Okay.
nothing extra you'll have to install or do. Nothing crazy like that. Yeah, no, it's purely UI, like those sorts of response-based things.
Okay.
Um, think, think, think. For a good example here is like the debugger. The debugger, what happens is you say test my flow. The server takes it, runs all the tests for the flow, captures all of the events, and then has to send each UI element back to your debugger screen. So the communication there is go to the server, run the event, report the event back. Go to the server, run the next event, report the event back. If you have a flow that has 100,000 things it's doing into it, that is a very burdensome communication between your browser and what the server is actually doing. The more we can take and just run in the browser so that it doesn't have to communicate back to the server, the faster, the less kind of performance hit you will see there, the less kind of burden of that bandwidth is going to happen. So it's going to start really simple, like validations on forms. Those will run client side rather than running on the server. And there's nothing you'll have to install or stress about or worry about from your end.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's also, and little side note here, just because it's a little technical, it's also how we're starting to improve the mobile app experience as well. Things like running validations on a mobile app. If you're not connected to the server, you're in an offline mode. Some of that processing needs to happen on the phone itself so that you can have responsive forms and custom validations and those sorts of things.
Gotcha.
You'll actually see the full task for that in the next slide. But yeah, that's the idea behind it.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. And yeah, that's the rest of the year. You'll see some other cool things here. Some new page model kind of tools and components we're going to have that are going to get added to the tool. Some things around just like updating tiles so that project view works. But really the main focus for us is project view and deployment server. Now, just glancing briefly into next year, the things that we're kind of looking at. Next year is going to be focused a lot on design experience. So two things we're doing is we're going to be updating pretty drastically the flow designer kind of experience, not the way the flows run, not the way the flows execute, but rather the way that users build in the flow. So iconography is going to get a huge update and change. The way you draw paths and lines, it's just going to be snappier and more responsive. The way you visualize data, the way that you can actually map data from one step to another, we're adding some features around there. So it's kind of all capsulated down towards the bottom where it says Flow Designer Refresh. We're going to do it for the Flow Designer. We're also going to do it for the Rule Designer as well. The way you go to a step property and say select, existing value from Flow, that's getting an update and a reworking. Really, just our design team spent a ton of time reimagining the most efficient way to build a workflow. And so we're kind of removing some of the bloat, removing some of the extra clicks and onerous clicks and dialogues that pop up that hide your screen. All of that's been evaluated. And we're going to be pushing some of those changes early next year. Some other things here that are cool. We've been asked for a non-edit or a non-save experience of all our designer entities. So you could go in and say, hey, there's a new permissions level for, Sabrina to go in and say, hey, you can look at my flows, you can edit them, you can see this new mapping editor, you can, visualize all the data. You could even hit debug and test it. But you can't make any changes. You can't save the workflow. You can't change the variables. So kind of think of a project manager role, someone who's going to go in and review the work and kind of take a look at it, but they don't actually need to be able to save or make changes. It's also be helpful, that non-edit experience for like a QA or production server. And then looking through the rest of the year, we're just going to be continuing to evaluate some of our design experiences and make significant updates and changes that are necessary. For example, like debugger in Q2, is that we're going to be adding a bunch of new features to debugger to make it an even more powerful tool for our workflow editors. We're going to be reconsidering how we do auditing on stuff and decisions. We had currently allow you to audit a bunch, but some of the reporting on it is a little, and it's kind of segregated. So the way you kind of get to the data and report on it consistently can be difficult and onerous. We're going to improve default auditing type stuff. And so, yeah, anyway, I could go through all of these one at a time, but for the sake of time and what people actually care about, I don't think I need to. But if you see one you want me to highlight or talk more about, please feel free to let me know. But that's the idea. Think of the theme of this year was deployment, hardware deployment first half of the year, kind of project-based deployment and moving across servers the second half of the year. Next year is going to be all about kind of the designer. We're gonna do some modernization of the UI, update process mining, update the mobile app, do things around those sorts of activities. And then just a couple things to hopefully get you excited. Just some long-term ideas that we're working with and things we're working around. Version 8, as you already know, is kind of the things we're focusing on. Project View and Deployment Server, because they are big, massive changes and updates to the tool, we'll see those probably leak into version 9. Including then once we release version 9, that will include some of those flow designer ideas and the rule designer ideas that we're going to be moving around through there. Something we're really excited about too, though, is into next year. They're actually the roadmap's a little off here. We're going to release them towards the end of this year as well. We're going to be adding some financial services and cross-industry accelerators. We're calling them accelerators or possibilities. Just a couple terms we're throwing out there. But the idea is that what we currently call the App Store, which is a little basic in its implementation. We're actually have a whole dedicated SWAT team of really, really good decisions developers and really smart people building out pre-built chunks of work for you, specifically in financial services, but as well as kind of things we think are cross-industry or generically. You ever say a word and think it sounds weird? That's what I just did. And things that are useful for many different use cases and really not industry specific use cases. And so they're building out those accelerators so that you can take them, deploy them into your environments, and then plug them into your existing workflows, or even some of them might be big enough to be standalone use cases. So that's the idea. Think of it as a refreshed app store, but it's a lot more than that, because each of those accelerators are coming with a full documentation, their own website link to watch a video on how to use them, those sorts of things. So if you're interested, if you're a financial services customer and watching this or listening, you're interested in those, I can get you in touch with the director of that kind of department over there. And then just looking forward into the next kind of couple of years, we are currently transitioning our front end to React. So React is a different UI kind of scripting language that allows, it's just different. What it means for you guys on the call is that the front end build, interaction with the application, React is very responsive, very fast, and much more modern looking UI wise and UX wise. And so we've already started to adopt it in a number of places, specifically in our reports and in our simple forms. Our simple forms are actually built using React. We're just going to continue to adopt it. It's not that we're waiting till 2024. We're going to continue to adopt it throughout all of these years. But we imagine that in order to get all of the portal transitioned over, it will take a while. So that's going to be what we're going to continue to work on. Client-side execution, I know that was asked earlier in the call, but that's something we're going to continue to work on as well. Again, we're evaluating it now and going to continue to work towards it. Really, the idea being we want your servers to be running the important things that servers should run. We want them to be scalable and cheap, hence the containerization. And then we want your UI and UX to be fast, responsive, without any lags or delay. And so that's kind of the major theme pushing the next few years as we continue to go forward in that. Again, process mining, we're going to work through that all throughout next year into 2024. And then built-in machine learning models. Yeah, we are not a machine learning company. We integrate with a lot of good machine learning third-party tools out there. However, we're going to start implementing models specifically for rule suggestion into the decisions platform. So for example, if you're building 50 rules and we have live production data running in those 50 rules on your production server, how do we report back to your developers and actually give rule recommendations to the developers based on that learning from your production execution? We want to build some of that capability into the tool so that as you're developing on the dev server, you would say, hey, this rule returns true 86% of the time. And based on process mining, we know that you want it to return true 100% of the time. We recommend this sort of change and present that data cleanly to the developer, make it seamless, those sorts of things. That's something we're looking at as we adopt forward into version 10. And then version 11, some of the kind of back-end architecture of decisions again. We kind of go through these swings of like updating the UI, updating the architecture, updating the UI, so on and so forth. We imagine that we'll start again really taking a hard look at the architecture of decisions and understanding maybe how our backend database works. We're still a relational database, either Microsoft SQL or Postgres. We're going to look at some other, like NoSQL data storage type things or some blob type storage, again, to make our hosting and kind of architecture and server performance improve. And so those are some things, again, we're just kind of looking at evaluating. All right, so a couple little teasers in case I bored you with some of the technical talk and the roadmap things. This is the idea around Project View. Again, huge disclaimer here. These are really early wireframes and screenshots. They're by no means the final thing that we are going to be releasing when it comes to Project View and or deployment server, but hopefully this gives you an idea of some of our thinking around what we're moving towards. So this idea being that users will no longer have a massive folder tree on the left. They would log into a specific or navigate to a specific project. And in that project, we have some default reporting on the left-hand side, or your default folder scaffolding on the left-hand side that gives you good kind of organization and structure. And then we can look at the screen here like a dashboard that gives you all of the information about your project, what it is, what the last change was, who's making changes. We're implementing some default project best practices or project health. So we can go in and say, hey, we recommend that all of your flows have error handling, and you have 20 items that are missing that error handling, and we'll give you a score based on some of those best practices and recommendations. So yeah, this is kind of the idea around putting your work into constrained projects. And then we can see which things in your project have issues, what the status is on the deployment server, what version you're on. And we're implementing something cool. You can see it in the screenshot. It's called to-dos. To-dos are going to be really small communication pieces of work you can add to anything in decisions that you can tag other users in and let them see your notes or work to do on anything. So take for example, you're building a workflow and I have a step that I'm working on and I have to leave for the day. I could add a to-do for my coworker who may be in a different time zone and say, hey, Heath, I have to step out. This form is not complete. Can you finish it in the morning? Go. And when he logs into the flow in the morning, he's going to see the step with a little icon next to it that says, hey, there's a to-do on the step and you're tagged in it. When he clicks it, he's going to see my note. So we're gonna be adding them project wide in the flow designer, in the rule designer, that give you the capability, just improve some communication across the user base inside the decisions portal. So anyway, you can also see here we're updating some of the UI and UX and adding new tools to your page view. You may have seen in Q4 we talked about page model redesign. You'll see some better tiling, some more responsive type tiling. Like you can see I'm on the info tile, and when it's clicked, it's got the arrow next to it and it's slid out. It's going to be, it's going to be more interactive, those sorts of things. So that's coming. And then with deployment server, yeah, the big thing for me to stress here is that not only is the user story changing, but visibility and insight into what's happening on that deployment server is really important. So all of your changes that you're pushing or pulling from the server, and then from that server experience, seeing your connected entities or connected servers, what entities are on them, when people make check-ins, what's the visual representation of changes that have been made. All of that's coming, and it's part of deployment server. I'm really excited about it. Oh, here's to-dos. Sorry, I could have talked about it here. Yeah, so the idea being that you can, on any step, add a mini to-do note or task for someone to go in and tag them, add it to the step, or add it to the flow, or wherever you want to add a little to-do. And then, yeah, just in the realm of kind of UI, UX updates, you'll actually see in the next version, I can show this on my local host. In the next version, we've updated the report designer and the report kind of viewer to be more modern and actually have a lot more user kind of functionality to it. We're also doing that with some of our old screens. You actually, if you go create a database integration right now, you're going to get a wizard with really old dialogues that walk you through a series of steps you must complete. We're modernizing it. So you're going to see it in this now, kind of like you see the query editor, you're going to see the ability to integrate with database tables or views or store procedure. It's all going to be one experience. And hopefully the point I'm making here is that I want you to know that we're evaluating all pieces of our product continually and making changes to them as we go forth. And then lastly, here's some early ideas around the flow designer refresh. It's kind of hard to see in the bottom right screenshot, but the idea is you can get a better data visualization of where data is coming from and going to from a step. So we do have the data explorer now, but it's a little onerous. So we're reimagining that. How do you take a step, see where the data is used, where the data is coming from, look at the variables, and make changes to them if you need to rapidly without 100 button clicks or navigating between multiple steps. Then there's going to be some more functionality, just a toolbox customization and cleanup is happening, but also like in the front screenshot here, convert to subflow. You can take a series of steps, group them together and say create subflow, and it will automatically put them in a flow with a start and end step with inputs that it needs to that step and outputs, and it put that in your parent flow as soon as you say save. So just those sorts of user experiences that we see users taking a lot of actions on. You build a flow and it gets bigger and bigger, and you say, really, I should put 6 of these steps as a subflow. Cool, highlight them, convert them to a subflow. That becomes one step in your parent flow. Now you have a subflow. That's the level of kind of thinking that we're putting into the flow designer refresh. I can ignore that confidence side. And yeah, cool stuff coming. Like I said, early designs, subject to change, but hopefully you can see some of the ideas that we're putting into here throughout the next couple of years. All right, still no questions. Let me show you one more thing that I just think is neat because it's coming in the next version, except I lost my mouse. There it is. Nope. My mouse does not want to move. I don't know why. That's all right. Transition to my touchpad. That's fine. I want to show you, this is version 8.4. This is the version that should be released soon, this week. I should go look at the release notes, but it's going to be released very, very soon. But one thing I want to highlight, I'm really excited about it, is you might notice the report viewer has changed. It's been tightened up a little bit. We've improved kind of the styling and kind of the way that it visualizes spacing on the report to be a lot cleaner and a lot more compact. But the big thing that we've updated here that we're reintroducing based off of customer feedback is the ability to group and sort on the column level now. So currently in later versions of 6 and version 7s, you actually have to click a dialog that pops up and specify your sorting, your grouping, your ordering, and all the things that you want to do. We've removed that and put it back on the columns. So if you want to group this column, just come here and click the group icon. You want to remove a grouping, like I have it grouped by, I don't know what it's grouped by right now. Oh, this is the default one. So it's grouped by entity type. I would find it and remove it there. I want to group by project, I can do that. If I want to go ahead and sort it, I can click the up and down arrow. And you can see that because we're moving this to React, it's just significantly faster. You can filter by specific columns again. So if I want to find just where this column has the word test, I can apply that filter. And then I can see here that the filter's highlighted and good to go. So this is all done. This is my local version, so it's done. The other really cool 2 things, search is back up here. So if you want to search the data inside of your report and find anything that has the word admin in it, it's going to, well, okay, everything's modified by admin. Anything that has the word flow in it, it's going to go ahead and filter that very, very quickly. And I can go ahead and remove that if I need to. And your runtime filters has been added back to the top panel here. So if I would then wanted to say, oh, will only show me things where the type is page data, I can switch that filter really quickly, click apply, and have that represented here, and then see that visualized at the top. If I want to go back to all, I just click all and apply. I can change the tags and filter it by tags, so on and so forth. So the idea being is that the report designer now in version 8.4, when as soon as you want to go install it, is going to be significantly kind of more user interactable and easier to understand. Some of these concepts were added back in from previous versions, but some of the things like the filters and the search have been drastically updated and brand new. So I'm just excited about it. I don't know, there's no specific reason for me showing you other than I think it looks great and I'm really excited about it. I think it's awesome. So that's a fun thing. Cool, questions. I kind of rambled there a lot about roadmap and exciting things we're doing. Any questions you have on screenshots I've shown, my version 8.4, what's going on in the product, that sort of thing. No. Cool. Let's see what else is fun here. Yeah. Anyway, there's a bunch of other cool fixes coming in 8.4 and 8.5 that really good quality of life fixes for like reporting and system administration. I think I mentioned that stuff. So, all right. Well, if there's no questions. Oh, there is one. As I'm about to wrap up, you caught me just in time. Go ahead. If you want to come off mute, let me. There you go. If you want to come off mute, you can ask your question.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you do a demonstration of how you use PowerShell in decisions?
Oh yeah, certainly. So PowerShell is something you have to enable for decisions install. It's actually an additional feature you have to install. So an administrator has to do this. We can go to System, Administration, Features, and find the PowerShell module or feature set here. If I just scroll down, there we go. Click the details button here and click install. This might make me restart my install. It might not. Okay, it didn't. If it made me restart my install, I'd have a note here that says, hey, new features have been installed. You must go restart your server. I don't have to do that. But there's a whole series of extra additional features here we don't install out of the box. Part of it is to try not to bloat your install. Part of it is because they're really some of these are use case specific. Not everyone needs to use message queuing services, so we don't install it out of the box to try not to add additional weight to your install. But either way, the one I found that I needed to install, PowerShell, good to go. I'm going to refresh my screen because I need to go find a specific folder. Yep, once inside of here, oh, you're going to test my knowledge. I got to find where this is. It's called PowerShell script project. Yep. You go into your system folder and it's going to be under system integrations, PowerShell script projects. And now you could say, okay, well, I in here am going to add a new project to store my PowerShell scripts. And we will call this, I'm going to call this simple PowerShell. But, whatever you need to do here. And then inside of here, you can go in and actually add a script that you want to run as part of a workflow execution. Now, so you could specify and I'll also go check the documentation, but I think you specify the script file location here. If there's any inputs, you specify them like into the script, like if you're doing server log capturing and you need to specify the folder directory logs, you specify them as inputs, and then you specify your outputs here. I don't actually gosh, I don't have my old scripts. I don't think I have any on my drive, but like you can say, script dot oh my gosh, is it P? No, I can't even think of the file extension. Whatever. You point to the script, you specify the inputs. Oh yes, thank you. My goodness. My brain is tired today. And then you give it this a friendly name. This is the name that you're going to find in the workflow. So I can say, run my cool script. Save. So now the moment I do that, this is going to become a workflow step inside of my workflows. So an administrator goes in, enables the feature, goes to the scripts project, creates the project, and adds whatever scripts you're trying to point to. I believe you also can copy the script text there. But again, I'd have to double check the documentation. But then you go to any flow, just grab whatever this flow is. And under integration, PowerShell, you'll find your script projects. Here's my simple PowerShell project. Here's run my cool script. And then I can drag it over. So once I do it here, I can run it on the server that's running decisions. I can run it on another connected kind of network connected machine, and I could specify the user and password for the computer name and user and password for the authentication for that. Where'd my properties go? Nope, I didn't mean to zoom in. Sorry, touchpads are hard. I can specify credentials, or I can hard code the credentials. I can hide some paths, but the idea is now this will go, it'll run that script, and it'll give you back output the output data as text, as strings. It also gives you any errors that occurred, and if it failed being that it actually couldn't run the script, like maybe credentials failed, that output path as well. So now the step, it just exists, and you can start figuring out what to do on each of those. Yeah, that's the very rough overview of how to do it. But that's the idea behind how you start to run scripts as workflow steps.
For running running the script remotely, do I
Mhm.
need to do any change on the physical decision server? Is there any Windows configuration that I need to set up before I can run those scripts remotely? I know it talks about trusted host and
Mhm.
things like those. Is there anything that I need to do from the seaside perspective to get that working?
Yeah, it's whatever allows remote PowerShell execution. I forget like what role you have to enable on the servers. But yeah, whatever server there's two things. On the server that decisions is installed, you have to enable it so that it can send, it actually can execute remote PowerShell scripts. And then on the server you're trying to run it on, it has to be able to accept PowerShell scripts. Again, that's my limited knowledge. I'm not exactly sure. I think let me just check the documentation real quick. I think it's in our documentation, but yeah, I do know you do absolutely have to enable that. Let's see. No, we don't care about the output. Yeah, so yeah, exactly here. So you have to go to, this is on the client. So this is on the server that decisions is running. You have to, make sure, or is it the other way around? Something like this. And again, I'm not a Windows admin anymore, so I'm not super familiar. But you do have to, PS remoting, that's what it is. You have to allow PowerScript execution on remote servers enabled. And then, yeah, then what I just showed you is exactly what it's showing here. But that should do it. And then once those roles are set up and the servers can do it, you set up the scripts as an administrator, you just run the workflows.
All
I only
right,
had to do
thank you.
this, yeah, I've only had to do this a couple times, but it's relatively simple kind of once you do the initial setup work. Good question. And it's been a while. I haven't done PowerShell in a long time. I did this way back in the day to help some of our early hosting configuration stuff. So I would have a bunch of PowerShell scripts on a decision server that allowed me to like get metrics and spin up and turn off servers and those sorts of things. It was a little crude, but it was fun. All right, wonderful. What other questions are there? Anything else I can answer? Demo. All right, going once, going twice. Sold. All right. Well, thank you guys. We'll wrap up just a little bit early. If there's nothing else, I will we'll go ahead and post this recording. And if you have any follow-up questions or you want to ask anything, please feel free to join another Lunch and Learn. We'll do one more this week on tomorrow, or you can send me an email if you want as well. If you have any product related or roadmap related questions, just Eric, ERIC@decisions.com, and I'm happy to hop on a call and help out. So yeah, hope you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thanks for letting me ramble about the roadmap. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'm sure we'll see you all at another Lunch and Learn. So take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.